waiting for the proof that fat causes heart disease. This is a cardiovascular surgeon. The Great Cholesterol Con is the name of his book. The Great Cholesterol Lie by Dr. Dwight Lundell, another cardiovascular surgeon who's performed 10,000 bypasses. Another one is The Great Cholesterol Deception, and that's written by Dr. Peter Dingle, a PhD from Australia. The Great Cholesterol Myth by Johnny Bowden. The Great Cholesterol Hoax. We're running out of names. And so when Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride wrote her book, she called it Put Your Heart in Your Mouth. And the first 3 chapters of her book, she lists all the environmental poisons that come into our bodies, whether we breathe them, whether we eat them, whether it comes in through our skin, it gets into the blood. And these environmental poisons, when they get into the blood, they have a damaging effect on the endothelium cells. The endothelium cells are the cells that line the arterial walls, and they start damaging those little endothelium cells. These environmental poisons can come in so many ways, from the clothes we're wearing, from what we're washing our clothes with, from our personal care products, including shampoos, conditioners, toothpaste. Comes in our food, in the chemicals that they spray on our food. I have to tell you, I would rather find a caterpillar in my lettuce, because what does that mean? Hasn't been sprayed with chemicals. What do they say? Don't panic, it's organic. That's what I try and say to our guests when I see a caterpillar crawling on the side of their plate. We do try. These environmental poisons come in so many areas that we don't even realise. What we're cleaning our bathrooms with, washing the dishes with. They come in little by little by little, like the dripping tap on a stone, like the analogy I gave last night, the strong rope that a strong man cannot break, but a little mouse can come along and start nibbling each thread. Little by little, they're having an effect. I don't know how they ever legalised putting mercury in people's fillings in their teeth. It's a neurotoxin. Did you know that was banned in America for 300 years? And in the early 1920s, a couple of European dentists came over, started their own dental association, and they legalised mercury. Why do they put it in people's mouths? Because it's the only liquid metal that sort of moulds to the tooth, and it's antibacterial, antifungal, it's anti-human as well. It's a neurotoxin. And when mercury gets into the blood, it also contributes to the damage on the arterial walls. So little by little it's coming. Last night we touched on the dangers of mould. Mould, if it gets into the blood, it can damage the arterial walls. Okay, students, who's going to plug up the holes? LDL cholesterol comes along and starts plugging up the holes. Cigarettes, it is estimated that there are about 7,000 chemicals in a cigarette today, and it's a well-known contributor to this build-up on the arterial walls. And the people don't realise that fabric softener they put in their towels, they don't realise that what they're cleaning their teeth with, little by little, it's building up on the arterial wall. Something else has happened. Last night we looked at the high carbohydrate diet that is a common diet today in the Western world, no matter where I go. We also looked at the fact that carbohydrates are not bad, it's just when they're overdone and refined, and many are doing that today. It's the fast food in the cities. It's like the carbohydrate from every different culture's all been put together. And that high carbohydrate diet releases high glucose. So what's happening in the blood? In the blood, we've got little protein molecules floating through. And these little protein molecules, they're naturally in the blood, but when there's a high amount of glucose, the glucose connects with these protein molecules and makes little unions that become sticky. And what happens is they stick on the wall of the arteries. Let's say we've got a particularly narrow area here, and one of these dislodges, moves down, blocks the artery. If it's in the carotid artery, there's the stroke. If it's in the heart muscle, there's the cardiac arrest. Now, can you see by what I've just told you, it's not just one thing that causes heart disease. It's a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of that. So when did heart disease become the number one killer? It was not long after, probably let it take its effect, what happened in the Industrial Revolution. When's the Industrial Revolution? What's that, about the 1920s, 30s? In the Industrial Revolution, they started to use a lot more chemicals. They started to create a lot more chemical fabrics. And they also developed high heat and chemical equipment to be able to extract oil out of the hard seed. You see, before that, let's go back to the 1800s, depending on where you lived, if it was in the tropical area of the planet, it was coconut oil or palm oil, saturated fat. And do you know those people were not dying of heart disease? In fact, heart disease was very rare, strokes were very rare. Let's go up the planet. If you lived in the Mediterranean area, it was olive oil. If you lived up in the northern countries, it was more likely to be butter from the cows. And in those let's go back thousands of years. Before the Industrial Revolution, heart disease was not the number one killer. It's with the Industrial Revolution. So something else that I just commented on is also causing damage to the arterial walls, and that is the altered fats. So when you go into the supermarket and you see those cheap oils in clear plastic bottles, soy oil, canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, don't touch them. They're dangerous. They're altered. They're so damaged that when a person eats them, they get into the blood, into the arteries, and they are contributing to the damage. So as you can see, it's just not one thing. It's little by little by little, like the dripping tap on a stone. We had she's a friend of mine actually. His name's David. And he's a chiropractic doctor, craniosacral, very fit, vegetarian, doesn't smoke or drink, cycles, goes over to Europe cycling every year, 200k cycles. He was getting breathless, and a friend of his who's a cardiovascular surgeon did an angiogram on him where they put the dye in the heart, and two of his arteries had 85% blockage. Now this would be about 85% build-up. No wonder he's getting breathless. You see, not a lot of blood's going through, and the blood carries the oxygen, getting breathless. So he was rushed in, and he was given a bypass. I used to assist in bypass operations. They saw the chest bones open, clamped them open, cut out the offending arteries, cut a couple from the legs, sew it up, and then put them into the artery. Do you know they're not as strong as the ones in the heart? It's quite an extreme operation. I talked to David probably a month after his operation. He said, "It's genetics, Barb, genetics." I said, "Dave, genetics loads the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger." They're only applying 5% to genetics today. He booked in to do our program, and I immediately put my detective hat on. Why did this happen to David's artery? Because there's always a cause. In fact, Proverbs 26 verse 2 says, the curse causeless shall not come. In other words, no problem happens without a cause. So I said to David, did you have a happy, healthy childhood? He said, mostly, but he said, both my parents were chain smokers. So what's young David breathing in all his childhood? He's breathing in this passive smoke with its thousands of chemicals. And I'd like to suggest that by the time David was 15, he had probably maybe 15 to 20% build up on his arteries. And then he told me that when he was 50, he wanted to put on muscle. You see, David was like many vegetarians, and many vegetarians are on this high carbohydrate diet. We looked at it briefly yesterday. Cereal and toast for breakfast. Sandwiches for lunch, or pizza, or pasta. And he liked a bit of sugar now and then, cakes, cookies, etc. He tried not to have them much, but he did have a little bit. Yes, he had potatoes. And often he'd have quite a bit of rice. Yes, he had some sugar. So what all of these do, these break down to glucose. And when you've got high glucose coming into the body, it forms these little AGEs, these advanced glycolated protein glucose molecules that get sticky. Many sink through ignorance. David thought he was eating quite well, but he was a bit concerned because he wasn't getting muscle. So in his 50s, he decided to start eating tuna every day to build up muscle, to get some more protein. Within 10 months, he started to show signs of mercury poisoning. You see, mercury is bioaccumulative. What does that mean? The bigger the fish, the bigger or the higher the accumulation of mercury. And when mercury gets into the blood, it does its damage. And so he eventually had to stop the tuna because he was getting mercury poisoning. So can you see what's happening in David? Started off with already, probably by 15, he's got build up there. But you know what you've also got? You've got a bit of scar tissue there, which always happens with damage. And then the mercury came in. Ooh, and it's building up, it's building up, it's building up. And his high carbohydrate diet, he's got these little AGEs, they're called. Eee. And so when his friend finally did the angiogram, he said, whoa, we've got to whisk you in and get those arteries out as quickly as possible. Now, when David came out of theatre, his doctor Googled what to do for such arteries, and up it came. And what's the list? You know the list? No matter who you are, no matter your age, no matter your size, you get the protocol. What is it? Blood thinning medication, cholesterol lowering medication, blood pressure medication. Am I right? No matter who you are. If you've ever had a stroke or a heart attack, go and talk to someone else who's had it, and what will you find? You're all on the same stuff. No matter who you are, no matter what your age, no matter what the cause of the heart attack was. But if you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. If you don't find the cause, you will never have a cure. And what is rarely asked is, why is that cholesterol there? Maybe they don't want to know why. Maybe it's too complicated. I don't know. But it doesn't make any sense to me. I grew up in a home where my father was an inventor. My brother's an inventor. And everything that came into the house was pulled apart and put back together so that Dad and Dave knew why. And when I was 18, I went to get my license, and my father said, you can't get your license till you learn how an engine works. I was not happy. None of my girlfriends had to learn how an engine works, but doesn't that make sense? I didn't have to become a mechanic. I remember something about spark plugs going up and pistons going up and down. But doesn't that make sense? So it was drilled into me as a child, why? But I'd like to suggest that that three-letter word's almost been forgotten. We need to know why. Why is that build-up happening in the artery? To blame cholesterol for heart disease is like blaming the fire trucks for the fire. Well, they must be causing the fire. Have you noticed they're always there? Cholesterol's just doing what God designed it to do, patching up the holes. What we should be looking at is what's causing the damage. When David heard this, he was excited because he now knew why. Was it genetics? No, it was not genetics. And once we investigated, that's why it's important as your own doctors, and I believe God meant every one of us to be our own doctors. Part of being your own doctor is documenting your case. Got that? Document your case. Find out about your birth. Find out about if you had shots. Find out when you were fed. Find out all the little bits and pieces that happen through your life all come together that makes us who we are today. You can't change that, but it actually fills in all the pieces of information. Can you clear that out? Yes. What an incredible body we live in. And God gave us an incredible body with an inbuilt ability to heal itself when it's given the right conditions. Dr. Agatha Thrash and Dr. Calvin Thrash, two American doctors who started a retreat called Uchee Pines. It's still running today, though they have long passed. And she used to tell the story from about the 80s. They had an alcoholic lady who's in her late 70s attend the program, and she'd just been diagnosed with atherosclerosis. There it is, arteriosclerosis, building up of the arteries. 85% occlusion of a couple of the arteries. But the doctors did not want to do an operation on her because of her age and because her body was not in a good state because of 40 years of alcoholism. So her family sent her to the health retreat. First 2 days were a bit tough. No alcohol, no caffeine, no sugar. But the staff were tender with her and she had juicing, and by the third day she was starting to feel very good. Her mind became clear. She picked up the Bible and she began to read the Bible. Every morning she read the Bible. She started with the Psalms, then Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, and she got to know of a wonderful God who loved her. And she surrendered her heart to God. By the end of the week, she was a very happy lady. Her life had done a total turnaround. And she said to Agatha, "Do I have to go home? Can I stay?" So Agatha and Calvin arranged for her a room for her to stay in, and she helped with the laundry, and she had a great time. She had a new lease on life. She found life that she had not known. After 10 months, they found her on a path she had passed. Agatha did a post-mortem on her, and she found that an embolism in her brain had burst. Very sad, but she passed very quickly. Agatha looked at her arteries. Her arteries were clear. 10 months after she'd been diagnosed with that 80% occlusion of the arteries, they were clear. Clear. Totally clear. Is that possible? It is possible. And rarely are you able to actually tested like that in 10 months. How would you know other than having another angiogram? And I'm not interested in having an angiogram. I will not have one. But I do everything that that lady did to have clear arteries. What did she do? She started having exposure to sunshine every day. I think that's easy in North Carolina, is that right? But make sure you get it. I was in Dubai a few weeks ago, and I went out in the late morning by the pool. I didn't have sunscreen on. Have you read the label on the sunscreen packet? I'm not interested in putting that on my skin. No, what I took with me was this little metal thing on my arm called watch. 15 minutes front, 15 minutes back, under the umbrella. You know, there's been a death and no one attended the funeral because no one knew he died. It was the death of common sense. And we need that sunshine. And the reason we need it for a few reasons. We need vitamin D. The ultraviolet rays from the sun hit the skin and they convert a form of cholesterol just under the skin. What's converted to vitamin D? Cholesterol. And that's another thing that medicine has done, is lowered the levels. I think you'll be very shocked to know what was considered normal levels 40 years ago. Do you know what was considered a normal cholesterol level 40 years ago? 300. Got that? 300. What are you told today? What do they want you today? 190? If you go down to 150, your brain's not going to work very well because your brain needs the cholesterol. Remember what LDL does? It delivers cholesterol to the brain. The brain loves it. I was in Maryland last year talking to a pathologist. She's late 70s. She said, for years, I've been testing cholesterol levels. She said, we considered 350 perfectly fine. Did everyone get that? 350? What are you told if you've got a cholesterol level like that? You're going to die. Never should we make a decision on this one. What did God say in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7? I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of power. What's power? Knowledge. God said, I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Remember what Dr. Malcolm Kendrick said? For the first time, normal levels of a normal vital body substance is being called a disease. What's that normal vital body substance? It's cholesterol. You cannot make vitamin D unless you've got adequate cholesterol levels. And in my next lecture, we're going to talk about hormones. Our sex hormones are made from cholesterol. You don't have enough cholesterol, you're not going to make your sex hormones. Whoa. This is important. The ultraviolet rays from the sun hit a form of cholesterol just under the skin to vitamin D, and vitamin D is essential for the assimilation of calcium, magnesium, in fact, all your minerals, and your heart needs those minerals. Water. The best blood thinner in the world is water. Why use of water? Because there's a time to drink water and there's a time not to. The worst time to drink water is when you're eating a meal, because your hydrochloric acid needs to be nice and strong to break down your protein, and you drink a lot of water with your meal. What's it going to do to your acid? We don't even have to be a scientist to know that one. So please drink between the meals. 8. Start early. That's how I get it in. I just start early. When you go to bed at night, make sure there's a glass of water next to your bed. So the first thing you do when you wake up is drink your water. So what are we also told to stop to help with heart disease and keep strong arteries? We're told to stop salt. Is that right? Let's have a look at salt for a minute. Seawater. Seawater contains 92 minerals. And of those 92 minerals, 30% is sodium and 50% is chloride. And because they're the first crystals formed, man scoops that up, bleaches it white, puts aluminium with it, and it becomes table salt. And table salt has 2 minerals, sodium chloride. They're such harsh minerals, if you were to mix it with water to make up seawater in a tank and put fish from the sea in it, they all die. 80% of that table salt goes to industry. And in Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, the Bible says, "Ye are the salt of the earth. If the salt has lost its savour," Old English. How does the salt lose its savour? I'd like to suggest that this salt has lost its savour. It's lost 90 minerals. The Bible says if the salt has lost its savour, it is henceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden underfoot of men. That's what the Bible says. And when I was in Minneapolis a few years ago in the middle of winter, I saw them throwing the salt on the road. And I thought of that verse. This salt is now good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden underfoot of men. Why is it so dangerous? Let me show you. Here's the cell. And the cell is surrounded by a bilayered membrane. And that bilayered membrane has sodium potassium pumps in it. And the highest concentration of mineral inside the cell is potassium. Outside the cell is sodium. And if someone is shaking table salt on everything, and by the way, those minerals are so harsh they kill the taste buds. So no wonder the person sits to the meal and shakes salt all over it and they haven't even tasted it. Have you seen that? That's because their taste buds are dying. And they're not having any potassium, especially on this high carbohydrate diet. Where are the fruits and veggies? So potassium levels are dropping. Sodium levels are rising. And osmosis and diffusion happens when the highest concentration goes into the lower. So sodium inside the cell rises, causing the cell to swell. There's your high blood pressure. The doctor's right. Table salt will cause or contribute to high blood pressure. But there's salt and there's salt. Celtic salt is a hand-harvested sea salt. Baja salt, another hand-harvested sea salt. And these hand-harvested sea salts contain approximately 82 minerals. Where's the other 10? Well, they're in such pico proportion that's barely measurable that it's inevitable that some are lost in the process. Dr. Jacques de Langry, a French doctor who wrote a book called Sea Salt's Hidden Power, if he gets someone with high blood pressure, he puts them on Celtic salt. He's a French doctor, and Celtic salt is hand-harvested from the Brittany coast in France. In fact, the French government have made 4 million acres a heritage zone. They value keeping that coastline pristine for their Celtic salt. Baja salt is hand-harvested from the Mexican coast in another pristine area. Some say, well, what about the microplastics? Did you know there's more microplastics in the air we breathe than in that salt? Some say, what about the mercury? Mercury's a heavy metal. It sinks to the bottom of the sea. The seaweed takes it up. The little fish eat the seaweed. The bigger fish eat the little fish. And then by the time you get to the biggest fish, there's your highest concentration of mercury. Be careful on the claims against these salts because they are valuable salts. And Dr. Jacques Delangre, he says if he gets someone with high blood pressure, he puts them on Celtic salt, because what it does, it restores the mineral balance in and out of the cell. If you've got high blood pressure and you're used to no salt, please start slowly. And a tiny crystal of Celtic salt before every glass of water is the quickest way to hydrate the body. A tiny crystal of Celtic salt on the tongue just before you have your glass of water with its magnesium pulls the water inside the cell, and it restores that balance. So please don't be fooled by the no salt diet. Psalm 146 verse 3, do you know it off by heart yet? Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help, because they often get it wrong. So there's salt and there's salt. So please don't be fooled by the salt-free message. And I ask you, what's a baked potato without salt? What are lentils without salt? Salt brings out the flavour in the food. We need salt. And we need salt because we need those minerals, and we need salt to get that water inside the cell. It's the quickest way to hydrate a body. What I suggest, and what many writers are suggesting, is to have a small crystal the size maybe of a sesame seed on your tongue before each glass of water. That's 8 times a day. How do I know that water is the best blood thinner? I used to do a live blood analysis at Misty Mountain, and the blood tends to zoom around the cell like this, around the screen. Sometimes I'd take a blood sample and the cells were clumped. I always presume I've spoiled the slide. Sometimes 5 blood slides later, it's still looking like that, and I say to the person, have you had any water to drink today? No. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they've had no water. They said, I was travelling and we're way out in the bush and they didn't want to have to keep stopping. But you know, that's quickly fixed, but I say to them, I'm sorry, I can't read your blood. It's all clumped. And they usually start drinking water when they see that blood slide. And the next day, I look at their blood, it looks like this. That's easy fix. That's how I know that water is one of the best blood thinners. No, there's no need to take aspirin. And I can't tell you what to do with your medication, but I would not take rat poison, Warfarin. Did you know that's what it is? I've known people that have said to me, I'm on Warfarin, my nose is bleeding, every time I bump my arm, I get bruised. Well, God gave us an alternative. It's called cayenne pepper. And Jethro Kloss, in his book Back to Eden, he devotes half a page to every herb, 10 pages to cayenne pepper. And he quotes 2 doctors. And one doctor said it's impossible to abuse cayenne pepper. Do you know what that means? You could have a bucket a day. But I don't know anyone that has a bucket a day. Some people say, Barbara, but is it safe? Do you ever say that? When the prince tells you that you should be on Warfarin, do you ever say, is this safe? And if you're coming off the rat poison, and remember, it's your choice, it's your God-given right to choose what you do, but if you are coming off, my suggestion is take 2 capsules 3 times a day. And if you say to me, is that safe? You can get cool cayenne, and that sort of cools the passage as it comes out. But the doctor who's quoted in Back to Eden, he says it's impossible to abuse it. You could have a bucket a day. What cayenne pepper does is thins the blood. You can have a bucket a day and your nose will never bleed and you'll never bruise. Because remember Psalm 104 verse 14, God gave herbs for the service of man. Rat poison, warfarin comes in and says, get out of my way, I've got a job to do, whether you need it or not. Eesh. I think we've forgotten what's safe. Cayenne pepper thins the blood. Cayenne pepper is a vasodilator. What's a vasodilator? Opens the blood vessels. And anything that opens the blood vessels means a more effective and efficient delivery of blood through the whole body. Remember Leviticus 17:11, the life of the flesh is in the blood. So moving that blood through the body is very important. Cayenne pepper also strengthens the arterial wall. So it strengthens these walls of the arteries. It's a remarkable herb. Sleep. Let me give you God's perfect mathematical formula. 8 hours to work, 8 hours to play. What's the next bit? 8 hours to sleep. Sleep is vital. While we sleep, our body restores and recharges, especially the hours before midnight. Try and aim for at least 2 hours before midnight. Many people suffer from insomnia today, and it's got a lot to do with those little devices. 80% of Americans sleep with their phones. Pillows, no protection unless it's made out of lead. Please put your phone in the next room. Put it in the next room. Many people sleep with a literal Christmas tree of lights around them. Get it out of there. Trust in God. This takes into consideration all emotional aspects of disease. We had a lady attend our program from London. She was 42. She just had a stroke. 42. They did an angiogram on her and her arteries were clear. But guess what they'd given her? Blood thinning medication, statin drugs, cholesterol-lowering medication, blood pressure medication. Do you see what I'm saying? There's a protocol, no matter who you are. No? And remember what you do? You say, thank you so much for your advice. I'm going to seriously consider this. Never should we make a decision on fear. God says, I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. A sound mind considers what you're hearing. So I began to investigate. Why did this lady have a stroke? She said, well, I'm the CEO of a big company. I wanted to know the week before the stroke. She said, I had a deadline to keep. She said, I was averaging 3 hours sleep a night. I was living on caffeine. Caffeine causes a crisis response in the body. And a crisis response means blood pressure rises, the arterial walls actually constrict a little, everything's ready for this crisis response, but actually there's no crisis response. The person just had a cup of coffee. And it's a major dehydrated. And so the blood's getting thick. She was highly stressed. She had a deadline to keep. What's the saying they have on the side of the road? Better to arrive late than dead on time. If you don't look after your body, it's going to stop you. And that's what her body did. It could not keep up with the pace. And she had a stroke. They rushed her to hospital. They revived her. And she came to our retreat wanting help. And I said to her, well, I'm not surprised you had a stroke. She was highly stressed. Do you know that we serve a solution God? And no matter what's happening, there is a way through everything. And that deadline she had to keep, was it kept now? No, but it was a miracle that she didn't die. There are some things that must stop, and caffeine is one of them. I had a doctor attend the program. He said, I used to have high blood pressure and my doctor told me to stop coffee. My blood pressure's all right now. You see, that's what caffeine does. It causes a crisis response. And in a crisis response, your blood pressure goes up because it's about to move you into what usually is required in a crisis. Tobacco. Well-known link between tobacco and heart disease. Inhale. In Genesis 2 verse 7, the Bible says that God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Nostrils. Mouth is for talking, mouth is for singing, mouth is for eating, mouth is for drinking. Nose and nose alone is for breathing. Some dentists are claiming that a lot of tooth decay is caused from mouth breathing. We should breathe through our noses. Nose purifies the air, nose humidifies the air, nose warms the air, nose balances blood gases. What are these blood gases? One of the blood gases is oxygen, and another blood gas that's balanced by nose breathing, this is in and out through the nose, is carbon dioxide. You can have too much carbon dioxide and you can have not enough carbon dioxide, and when you breathe outward from your mouth, you lose too much carbon dioxide. In the lungs, there are 4 docking sites for oxygen, and when we breathe in, those docking sites for oxygen need 4 molecules of carbon dioxide. There's a gaseous exchange. If there's only 2 molecules of carbon dioxide, only 2 molecules of oxygen can be picked up. On every hemoglobin, there are 4 docking sites. You breathe out through your mouth, you lose too much carbon dioxide, and you might only pick up 2 molecules of oxygen instead of 4. You will get more oxygen at the cellular level when you only nose breathe. So that's happening in the lungs, and now we come to the cell wall. And there needs to be 4 molecules of carbon dioxide coming out of that cell for 4 molecules of oxygen to be able to get into that cell. And nose breathing balances carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is a vasodilator. You'll get better at it. Have you tried taping your mouth up yet? That encourages nose breathing. The more you nose breathe, the more the little canals at the back of your nose open. The other gas is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is also a vasodilator. Do you know what that means? It's just breathing in and out through your nose opens your blood vessels. Nitric oxide is also quite remarkable. It's antifungal, antimicrobial. Are you starting to see that everything we need, we've got? It's already inside of us. We just need to know how to access it, and nose breathing ensures adequate levels of oxygen, carbon dioxide and nitric oxide. Mouth breathing does not do that. Mouth breathing, no nitric oxide. Mouth breathing, you lose too much carbon dioxide. Must be nose and nose only. Nutrition. There are 3 essential food groups. Let's look at the 3 essentials. 3 essential food groups are fibre. All plant foods have fibre, especially fruits and vegetables. Protein. The cleanest burning fuel regarding proteins is plant proteins. That's legumes, nuts and seeds. Fat is an essential food group. That's why nutritionally, scientifically and taste-wise, the fat-free diet makes no sense at all. No sense at all. And doesn't it make food taste nice? So the best oils are oils from your nuts, your seeds. How do you get them? You eat the nuts and the seeds. Avocados, coconut, olives, olive oil, coconut oil, been used for centuries. They've proved, in fact, they've passed the test of time, these oils. And before the Industrial Revolution, they were not causing heart disease. Moderation in all the good things. I don't suggest you have a cup of olive oil a day, but I don't know anyone who actually has any desire to drink a cup of olive oil a day. Yes, you just have a little bit, but that little bit is important. Exercise is the number one heart strengthener. Strength comes by exercise. There's no other way. Implementing an exercise program every day is essential to strengthen the heart. And the lady that died after 10 months, who had quality of life for 10 months, by now she was almost 80, and Agatha Thrash did a post-mortem on her, and her arteries were clear. Her arteries were clear because this is what she'd been living for that 10 months, and it had cleared out her arteries. I'd like to just, because my time is almost up, I want to speak for a moment about statin drugs and how they work. Statin drugs inhibit the pathway in the liver that the liver uses to make cholesterol. But that same pathway that it uses to make cholesterol, it also uses to make coenzyme Q10. You've heard of coenzyme Q10? It's your heart protective enzyme. So a person goes on the statin drugs thinking that they're going to prevent having a heart attack, and they can actually increase their risk because they've now lost coenzyme Q10. So let me tell you the side effects of the statin lowering, the statin drugs, the cholesterol lowering drugs, Lipitor, Crestor, dementia, Alzheimer's, memory loss, muscle wasting, and they've just added another one, breast cancer. Interested? Drugs never cure disease. They just change the form and location. I was in New Zealand a few years ago, and I gave a similar lecture to this on Tuesday night. Thursday night, this is 48 hours later, an elderly man came up to me with his wife. She was very quiet. He said to me, "I have a story for you." He said, "We're about to put my wife in an aged care facility. She's been on Lipitor, which is a common cholesterol-lowering medication. She's been on Lipitor for 5 years. I'd wake in the night and she's not in bed. I find her walking down the road with no clothes on. She's leaving the iron on. She's leaving the gas on the stove." He said, "It was so perplexing to us that we had to make that very difficult decision to put her in aged care because we could not keep an eye on her 24 hours a day." He said, "We came to your lecture, we stopped the statin drugs Tuesday night." He said, "It's Thursday night and we've got my wife back." Hey. He had tears coming down his eyes. Eesh. Do you know, I believe it's almost merging on criminals, things like this. How many people in aged care facility diagnosed with dementia, and it's because they're on the statin drugs? If you are on statin drugs, Lipitor, Crestor, you can stop right now. There will be a side effect. Your memory will return. That's the only side effect I know. One lady said, "What can I do as an alternative?" I said there's no need for an alternative because cholesterol does not cause heart disease. It's the result of damage to the arterial wall. And when you implement the Sustain Me principles, exercise, water, plant-based diet, nose breathing, trusting in God, thanking Him every day for this wonderful heart that He's given us. Remember those two systems I showed you last night? One is based on faith, one is based on fear. Faith in an incredible body created by God with an inbuilt ability to heal itself, and it will if you give it the right conditions. This is why Proverbs 4:23 says, keep the heart with all diligence. How do you keep the heart with all diligence? Implementing these basic principles. Keep the heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life. What's the life of the flesh? The blood. How do we keep the blood working well? What does the blood carry? Oxygen. Make sure your nose breathes so it's getting enough oxygen. What else does it carry? Water. Well, we're the ones that supply the water. Sorry, Coke, coffee won't do it, tea won't do it, juice won't do it, soda won't do it. How clean would your body be if you washed it in coffee, soda, tea, juice? Must be water and water alone. It carries the water, and if you've ever tasted your blood, it is salty. We need salt, but we need the whole salt. The water and the oxygen are carried by the blood, and the nutrients. Make sure you're supplying correct nutrients. Make sure you're having fibre. Every meal we should have fibre. Every meal we should have a variety of fibre. Count your fibre. I'll count my fibre for lunch. I had lettuce, I had tomato, I had olives, I had hummus, I had baked potatoes, I had baked sweet potato, I had baked pumpkin, you call it squash. I had black-eyed beans, I had some chickpeas, and I had some pecans. 10 different types of fibre, fed 10 different types of microorganisms in my gastrointestinal tract. And we'll be talking about that tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to talk about how you can boost your immune system. And you might say, excuse me, Barbara, we're not talking about the gastrointestinal tract, we're talking about the immune system. Did you know that's where it starts? That's where it starts. We supply the nutrients. So we're the ones that determine the quality of our blood. Make sure you're well nourished, make sure you're well watered, make sure you're well oxygenated by nose breathing. You'll get better at it. By the time you get to the top of that hill walking very fast, you won't think it possible to breathe through your nose, but you'll get better at it. I do it now. I've trained myself, only nose breathe. Such simple things. And I believe that that's what God meant it to be. Jesus said in John 10:10, I have come that you might have life, and that you might have life more abundantly. Life should be good. The story of the alcoholic lady who died of an embolism is a sad story, but the last 10 months of her life was so good. And I think she would have lived if those arterial walls hadn't been so damaged by so many years of alcohol. But we live in a very forgiving body. Maybe if she'd had cayenne pepper every day, that her arterial walls would have got a little stronger. I don't know. You've got hindsight. But I tell you these stories that right now we learn from them, because today is the first day of the rest of your life. Today you can make a change. God's government is a government of freedom. And freedom is based on free choice. I am the master of my destiny. I'm the one that chooses. One lady said, my doctor says he won't see me if I go off the statin drugs. I said, so be it. So be it. And we had a pharmacist do our program, and she said, I'm annoyed. She said, I'm not against drugs, that's my business. But she said, recently a circular came around that anyone with a cholesterol level above 190 had to go on cholesterol-lowering medication. She said, I'm annoyed because she said this is just a money-making scheme. Did you hear that? That came from the mouth of the pharmacist. She said if someone goes on antibiotics, they're on it for 1 week. If they're told to go on cholesterol-lowering medication, how long are they told they're on it for? Life. And so David happily stopped all his medication. The lady from London, the 42-year-old woman who'd had a stroke, she stopped all her medication because she now had the information and the knowledge. The Framingham Heart Study, little town of Framingham in America, been going for 40 years, about 40,000 people, some die, more come on. I like this study. It was not funded by the pharmaceutical company. It was not funded by the meat or the dairy or the wheat or the sugar industry. It's an independent study set up to prove that cholesterol causes heart disease. Well, it's 40 years later and it hasn't done it yet. But what it did prove is that people with high cholesterol levels don't get Alzheimer's. Do you need a moment's silence to digest that? So if your prince tells you, if your cholesterol levels are 350, you got to go on cholesterol-lowering medication, you're a walking, talking heart attack, you're going to die. What do you say? Thank you so much for your advice. Take the script, leave, and I'll leave it up to you. What are my cholesterol levels? I don't know. I've never had a cholesterol test and I'm not about to have one. Everything works. So why do I? But what I do, I diligently adhere to these sustain me principles. I have found a formula, and the formula works. And the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, prove all things. That's a challenge. Prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. It's a challenge. Try it. Prove it. Hold fast. It's old English. It means if it works, do it. I have proven this and I hold fast. And that's why we end our classes at about 8:15 so that you can get home as quickly as possible and get to bed. And wake up early and start running up and down the hills, but make sure you're well hydrated so that you can experience yourself the power of these simple and yet powerful lifestyle changes. Before I finish, one more thing. There's a herb called the hawthorn berry. And the hawthorn berry is a herb that strengthens the heart. Remember Psalm 104 verse 14? God gave herbs for the service of man. If your blood pressure's low, it'll bring it up. If it's high, it'll bring it down. One lady said, what can I do for my low blood pressure? I said, are you fainting all day? She said, no. I said, well, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So please, for your sake, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Before we have a break, I'd like to introduce my daughter Emma. And my daughter Emma's going to tell you a few things about what's in the shop. Thank you, daughter.
Thanks, Mum. Well, g'day for those that don't know who I am. My name is Emma. I'm her daughter. And I have lived in America. I married a Yankee. And I've lived in Minnesota, Wisconsin for the last 26 years. We have 7 children. And due to a demand a year ago, I started up a website called BarbaraO'Neill.com because Amazon lost a whole bunch of Mum's Green Book, so we opened up the website to be able to get this book to people, and it kind of snowballed from there. We now have 15 staff, and we ship out 500 orders a day. And so, what I'd like to tell you is that please be careful where you buy things, because like on Amazon, there is 712 fake books written by my mother, and there is, as many of you may have known, there are hundreds and hundreds of fake TikTok, Instagram and Facebook accounts. And they're not us, they're people out to make money. And we get hundreds of emails and text messages a day of all the scams that are out there. So please be careful where you buy things. So what I'd like to tell you is just a wee little bit about what's in my shop. And a lot of people have questions, well, you've got 3 books in your shop, which one is the best one? So I'm just going to tell you a wee bit about each one. I need a 3rd arm. If evolution was true, mothers would have 5 arms. Oh, look, my helper. G'day, mate. How's it going?
Very good.
Did you tell these people how we met 10, 12 years ago?
Briefly.
Oh, beauty.
This is my sister.
Little brother.
In the Lord, yeah.
So, Self-Heal by Design was written by Mum about 7 years ago, and I'm going to kind of bottom line it for you quickly. Mum goes into candida, cancer, and how disease gets a grip in the body. And then also in the back, there's a wee little recipe book of all mothers' favourite recipes. So that's bottom lining it for you. This book here, Sustain Me, I'm going to have Tristan hold the microphone, mate. There we go. Okay, so a lot of people think Sustain Me is just a word. It's not. It's actually a wonderful little acronym that Mum came up with. The Sustain Me is the 7 laws of health, 9, that Mum has just rubbed off the board. But what Mum does in this book is kind of like having Mum in your back pocket, because she takes those 9 laws,
Gotta have big pockets.
and she goes through all the systems in the body. So she starts at your head and goes through the head, digestive tract, your lungs, your heart, your pancreas, your liver, your spleen, your colon, your skin, your bones, sleep, autoimmune diseases. She goes through arthritis, gout, and she also goes into pain relieving, and there's more there, but I haven't quite finished memorising them all. And so when you go to each chapter, so let's quickly turn to, I'm just going to throw a nail out there. Let's go to arthritis and gout. So the first page is about gout. The second page is Solution 1, which is all herbs and different things you can do to relieve it. Then the next section is Solution 2, where Mum applies those 9 laws of health specifically to arthritis and gout. And there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages of applying those 9 laws to arthritis and gout. So this book is like an encyclopedia, a manual, Mum in your back pocket. Last but not least, we have, thanks mate, we have the assassination of Barbara O'Neill, or in the shop you'll see it called AOBO, then we don't have to write the whole word. But basically this is my mum's life story, starting from when she was a child through today, and it goes into deep depth of how the HHC, which is the equivalent of the FDA in America, basically crucified my mother and her life work. If she speaks, lectures, talks or emails any other person, human, in Australia, she will get an instant 12 years in jail. And so that's why my mother sacrifices her life and spends 10 months of the year going to you lovely people. And if you look here, here's a really cute picture of me and Mum, and my husband and I, the Minnesotan Doug, we got married at 11 o'clock, and my mum and dad got married same day, same place at 4 o'clock, and then there's all my siblings there. So there's a little bit of case history. So we won't let you sit any longer. You can get up. You've got 30 minutes or 20?
20 minutes.
You've got 20 minutes to get up, get some fresh air, use the dunny, and see you back here soon.
Thanks, mate.
Check, check. Check, check. Check, check. Check, check.
The people.
Check, check. Check. Is that better? How's that? Can you hear it? Is that better? Is that better? Okay.
Is Ken here?
No. Huh?
I have to get started and he has to. So I need that slide up.
Yes. Is that better, Jason? Did you hear?
So yeah, I turned it up a little bit, and I also turned the speaker pointing in a little more. I think it's inside, but you're having more problems than outside.
Somebody's complaining again about kids screaming and hollering back there. So we need to make them. My husband hasn't even talked to me yet. I can just hear him having a conversation. That's funny. We got a real good view of this gentleman's. Oh, So, were people complaining about the kids making too much noise back there?
All right, so what have we got here? I got a spiel. You got a spiel, huh?
Okay. All right. See you in a second. Okay. Love you. Bye. So what? There was a gentleman who was asking if this was going to be live streamed because he's having a hard time hearing specifically. We're going to try to ask him
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's
our own kids,
kids.
which would be the worst. So when things are done, are you going to run the other golf
I
cart?
can run the other golf cart, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to
Yeah.
be planning ahead of time.
That's right. Yeah. If he asks, just tell him that I'm running it.
Oh, okay. I will
Yeah.
do that. Oh, I need to go and look at the blue one and see if the key's in it. I'm going to go do that now and
Okay.
take it myself.
Okay.
Just on. It looks like Pen is. Oh, no, that's Lee. He said he was almost here.
Good crowd again.
Yeah. Will you do me a service real quick? Will you run over to Emma's booth and find out how many they're planning on selling after this meeting?
Yeah.
And how long? Good evening, everyone. We're going to be getting started here. If you can make your way to your seats. Yeah, it's time. We're actually a little bit over time. Sorry, intermission was a bit shorter than normal. Yeah.
Did it fall down?
I took it down.
It was up there.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah, he was climbing in there. I put him under a barn over there. How many of you learned something new in the last lecture? Amen. I did. I've been listening to her for years. Her new book, Sustain Me, is I'm pouring through it right now. It's really a massive asset to have. So.
She will be selling afterwards.
Okay.
She'll stay. So.
Great. So if we can all take our seats and quiet down. Also, for all of you in line, I know that you want to finish over there, but there are going to have the booths open. All the vendors will be here after the meeting, and we're going to stay until we've served everyone that wants to have service tonight. So it is truly a privilege to live in America. Amen? I don't know if you heard what the Australian government has done to Barbara, but they have shut her down. And, you know...
Yeah, mate?
You got something?
You keep going, I'll talk in a minute.
Yes, ma'am. But what an amazing privilege we have to live in this country with its foundation in liberty. The freedoms we enjoy are unparalleled in this world or in history. We are so accustomed to liberty that we almost take it for granted. But at this moment, our freedoms hang in the balance. How many of you have been blessed so far by what we've been learning from Barbara? How many of you would like an opportunity to hear more from her? Barbara is a keynote speaker at the next event, which actually starts this Thursday, so the day after tomorrow. She's not speaking on Thursday, but this event starts on Thursday. She's speaking on Friday and on Saturday. And it's called DeSozo Camp. That word DeSozo is the Greek word translated in the Bible, both physical healing and salvation. Linking the idea that our bodies and our souls are connected. And that God works by the healing of the whole man, whole woman. And that's what this message has been all about. So, when we saw the incredible turnout for the first 3 days, we, on the camp meeting committee, decided to move camp to this venue. We were in a whole different place. We wanted to share Barbara with you guys some more and invite you to our event. So, I want to encourage you to consider joining us, each of you. You're all welcome. It's from Thursday to Sunday morning. We're going to look at how liberty is under attack in America and how there are forces that are seeking to do away with our Constitution and Republic as we know it. We are going to understand the true issues that are at the center of this battle over righteousness that you are witnessing take place before your very eyes. We're going to look at civil liberty, medical freedom, and the Founding Fathers' understanding of how to uphold these freedoms given by God. Would you guys like to have that power? To know how to stand? We're going to look at the attacks on liberty that are just before us and how the Word of God shows us to navigate them and stand for truth. That's the focus of the entire camp meeting. And I want to encourage each of you to consider joining us. We're going to put a QR code up on the screen here. And if you just scan that with your phone, I already tested it. It works all the way at the back. It just takes a second. That's not the right one. There it is. So if you'll just scan that QR code with your phones, just open your camera app and point it at it, and it'll give you a little floating, at least on an iPhone, it'll give you a little floating button you can push. Push that, and it'll take you right to the camp registration. It's the same price point. I think it's $10 for Friday and Saturday. If you sign up for those events for Barbara's going to be speaking each evening just like this, Friday and Saturday. You're implied you have a ticket for the whole event. So you're welcome to come and join us. It starts at 9 a.m. Actually, 7 a.m. We're going to have worship in the morning if you want to join us for that. But at 9 a.m. we start the lectures, and it goes all through the day. So all the schedule also, each of you got a bag when you came here and had a book in it and some pamphlets. One of those pamphlets is a folded full sheet of paper that's full color, print on both sides. That is the camp meeting flyer. So you can see the speakers, what they're going to be talking about, their subject titles. And I really want to encourage you, if you're going to consider coming, to come on Thursday, even though Barbara's not speaking that day. Because Thursday we're going to lay the foundation for a lot of what I just discussed. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Emma.
There was something very important that I forgot to tell you, a couple of vital pieces of information. My website is really, really easy to remember, barbaraoneil.com.
2 L's.
2 L's, no apostrophe, barbaraoneil.com. And then also, if you go into international stockists, they're the people that sell our book. And then on my little notepad that I sell in the shop, we have the social media channels that are real. So on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram, it's Real Barbara O'Neil. And yes, don't worry, there's people out there already faking the Real Barbara O'Neil. And how you know if it's the right one is underneath her page, it has the name of Dad's website, which is selfhealbydesign.com. Just no Mum's Green Book, Self Heal by Design. It says www.selfhealbydesign.com. And then if you're looking for me, I am really easy. You ready? Barbara O'Neil, daughter. So that's the 2 Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook pages, Real Barbara O'Neil and Barbara O'Neil, daughter.
She's a little lady, but she casts a big shadow. I love you, Emma.
Thanks, mate.
All right, we'll...
Welcome back, everyone. And what I'm going to be speaking about tonight is probably one of the most popular presentations, and that is on hormones. And not only women have hormones, but men have hormones too. Yes, and also a disruption in ladies' hormones. We're certainly going to be looking at that, but also what happens with the disruption of men's hormones. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to begin by taking you through some of the main symptoms of a female having a hormonal imbalance, and then some of the symptoms of a male having a hormonal imbalance. I'm going to take you through the monthly cycle. I'm going to take you through and show you all the things that are causing a disruption of the balance, and then I'm going to finish by showing you how you can restore the balance, because this incredible body that we live in is constantly attempting to maintain the balance. So what are the symptoms of a female having a hormonal imbalance? One of the first ones is just very early periods. Did you know that normal is 16 to 18, but you hardly ever hear of that now? We're getting young girls that are getting their monthly periods at 9, 10 years of age. It's almost like they've lost part of their childhood. Also very heavy periods, very painful periods. Premenstrual tension. And going a little bit more serious at endometriosis, fibroids in the uterus, cysts in the ovaries, polycystic ovarian syndrome, thyroid problems, osteoporosis, depression, and going even more serious to breast cancer, uterine cancer, cancer of the ovaries, the cervix. These are some of the symptoms of a female having a hormonal imbalance. What about a man? What would be the symptoms of a man having a hormonal imbalance? Could be low sperm count. And how many couples can't have children today? It's quite alarming. So low sperm count, also penile dysfunction, inability to hold an erection. The figures today, the recent figures in Australia, which I think are indicative of just about worldwide, 50% of men over the age of 40 are struggling with this one. Why? So where's my resident why? Because there is always a reason. Newton's third law of motion states that to every action there is an equal and an opposite reaction. In other words, there is always a reason. Another symptom of a man having a hormonal imbalance is prostate problems. Also, too much of the female hormone can cause a man to be effeminate, and too much of the male hormone can cause a woman to be masculine. These are some of the symptoms of people having a hormonal imbalance. So let's have a look at these main hormones. Notice, and we mentioned this in our last presentation, that our sex hormones are made from cholesterol. From cholesterol, the body makes pregnenolone, and pregnenolone is what progesterone comes from. Progesterone is a key hormone because progesterone is the precursor of estrogen. Progesterone is the precursor of testosterone. So whether man or woman, progesterone is the precursor of these hormones. Testosterone. Testosterone's called the male hormone, whereas estrogen's called the female hormone. There's one progesterone, and progesterone is often given the nickname mother. And the reason progesterone is given that name mother is because it's from progesterone that the son is made, from progesterone that the daughter hormone is made. Progesterone also is the precursor for the adrenal hormones, and the adrenal hormones are often called your fight and your flight hormones. There's one progesterone, one testosterone, but there are 3 estrogens. There's estrone, and estrone is given the name E1. There's estradiol, and estradiol is given the name E2. And estriol, often called the delicate estrogen, it's called E3. So what I'd like to take you through is the monthly cycle. It's a 28-day cycle. So this is day 1 of the monthly cycle up to day 28. And there are 2 main players in this monthly cycle, which makes up 4 weeks, and one is progesterone. And progesterone, we're going to give a green outfit. And I'm going to describe this monthly cycle like a dance, because it is like a dance. Different players come onto the stage at different times of the month. And progesterone's nickname is happy hormone. And there's a saying in Australia, happy wife, happy life. And the fact is, when you've got a happy wife, you've got a happy home. Unfortunately, because of hormonal imbalance, this is affecting many women. So progesterone is one of the players in this monthly dance, and the other player is estrogen. And estrogen's main role in the human body is that of a cell proliferator. Cell proliferator means causes massive cell growth. And it is estrogen that causes the skinny young girl to develop into a beautiful, shapely woman. But if estrogen levels remain high, the beautiful, shapely woman can get out of shape the other way. I liken estrogen to fire and water, good slave, bad master. Important, but in its right amounts. So day 1 of the monthly cycle, which is the day a woman begins to menstruate, progesterone levels are low. Day 1 of the monthly cycle, estrogen levels are also low. But by day 7, estrogen levels are starting to rise. And in the second week, estrogen now becomes the star player in the monthly dance of the hormones. Let's go to the stage where this dance is played out. And this is the reproductive organ of a woman's body. Here is the uterus. That's the birth canal. These are the fallopian tubes. And we've also got the ovaries, and the ovaries are connected to the uterus by a ligament, and then the birth canal. So they're the reproductive organs of a woman's body. So at this time of the month, with this rise in estrogen as a cell proliferator is causing massive cell growth on the lining of the uterus. It was the first week that the blood nest came away, but with this rise in estrogen in the second week, it is now causing massive cell growth, causing the blood nest once again to develop. Estrogen is also causing eggs in the ovaries to fully develop. Estrogen is also causing a form of lubricant to be released in the birth canal. By day probably 14, in some women it may be 13, in some women it may be 15. So around this time, a fully developed egg bursts forth from the ovaries, and the little filaments on the end of the fallopian tube pull the egg up, and it moves up, up, up. The fallopian tubes are ever moving like this, causing the egg to move up. Now the hole where the egg bursts forth develops a blister, and that blister is called corpus luteum. I've written it in green because corpus luteum is the main site of progesterone production in a woman's body. Now, can you see by what I've just described to you the importance of a woman ovulating every month? Because when a woman ovulates every month, corpus luteum's made, and corpus luteum, developing every month, maintains progesterone levels, and that is vital because progesterone, as mother hormone, is keeping estrogen and testosterone in the levels they should be. In fact, progesterone plays a protective role on testosterone, keeping it in the balance that it should be. And so with the development of corpus luteum, by day 14 approximately, now we have a rise in progesterone. Progesterone is now the star player in the dance of the hormones. So what effect does progesterone have? Progesterone has a ripening effect on the lining of the uterus. I liken progesterone to the plasterers and the painters putting the finishing touches on the lining of the uterus. Progesterone also heightens a woman's mood as happy hormone at this time of the month to the point of increasing her sexual desire at this time of the month. So what's happening to estrogen? Estrogen's given the message to go backstage because we have no need of estrogen now, because we've got the bloodness, we've got the egg, we've got the lubricant. So with the rise in progesterone and the heightening of the mood, the refining of the blood nest, it has another effect, and that is on the cervix. The cervix is the little gateway from the birth canal into the uterus. And it is in labour, when a woman is in labour, that cervix gets thinner and thinner and thinner. That's over many hours. That's every contraction. Every contraction a woman gets, there's a thinning, and then a pulling up, and then when that cervix is totally open, then the baby comes through. That's the cervix. But let's have a look at this time of the month, what's happening to the cervix. The cervix looks like a little soft cushion with a little hole in the middle. Looking at it from sideways, the cervix looks like this with the soft cushion sides and the little mucus plug. But with the rise in progesterone at this time of the month, the sides of the cushion come up a little tighter, and a special form of lubricant is released around the cervix, and this lubricant is designed specifically to facilitate the entry of sperm up into the uterus. So you can see from this that the stage is now set for the entry of man. Did you know that between 200 and 500 million sperm are released with one ejaculation? The sperm is the smallest cell in the human body. And sometimes up to half the sperm comes straight back out. And if the sperm meet this top cervix, difficult to gain entry, but because the sperm is the smallest cell in the human body, usually a few get through, but if the sperm meet this cervix, this lubricant literally grabs the sperm and shoots it up into the uterus, and it's got a long journey, long way to go. And sometimes they go down the wrong road and they die, get taken away. But sometimes they go down the right road and aha, they've found their prize. And the prize, of course, is the egg. The covering of the egg is like folds. And the sperm has to nudge its way into one of those folds. It's not easy to gain entry. And when finally one gets through, then all the other folds shut tight so that no other sperm can get in. And chemicals are released from the egg to kill off any sperm that might try and gain entry. Isn't it incredible what they know about the human body today? And the more they know about the human body, the more incredible it is, and the more it is an illustration of a master designer. on this incredible body. So what happens if the sperm connects with the egg? In other words, what happens if a woman conceives? If a woman conceives, then her progesterone levels soar 200%. Don't we often say when a woman's pregnant, she is just blossoming? What if she's not blossoming? It would indicate that she's lacking progesterone, and we'll look at why that would be so in a minute. What about estrogen? In pregnancy, it is estriol levels that rise. Estriol is the delicate estrogen. So it's estriol levels that rise in pregnancy. Estrone, called E1, has strong cell proliferator action. Estradiol, E2, it also has strong cell proliferator action. So what happens if there is no conception? Then by day 26, estrogen levels have dropped right down. By day 26, progesterone levels have dropped right down. And when both of these levels drop down, the blood supply to the uterus is cut. And when the blood supply to the uterus is cut, then the blood nest comes away and we are once again at day 1 of the monthly cycle. Just an incredible process. And when it's working well, it runs like clockwork. But the problem today is there are some major imbalances in the hormones, and many monthly cycles do not look like that. And before I go through all of the things that can contribute to the disruption of that cycle, I'd like to comment on sperm for a moment. Did you know that sperm is an alien for a woman's body? And when sperm enters woman's body, her immune system rises to attack. But when sperm goes through the prostate gland of a man, it takes on an immune suppressant property. So when woman's immune system rises to attack, the immune suppressant property of sperm knocks back her immune system and sperm survives. Isn't it a miracle any of us are here? But woman's body has memory, and every time her husband enters her, woman's immune system rises to attack and says, "Oh, it's husband, we'll just stand back." But can you imagine if a woman has multiple partners? That can have quite a devastating effect on her immune system, and especially in the area of anal sex. But what are the major disruptors in this monthly cycle? Well, it started in 1957. Do you remember what happened in 1957? So maybe some of you weren't born yet. The first contraceptive pill was introduced to women. The 1960s is called the sexual revolution. Women wanted to be able to have sex without falling pregnant. So let's have a look at what the pill is. The pharmaceutical companies grow acres and acres of Mexican wild yam. And Mexican wild yam contains a plant chemical called diosgenin. And in a laboratory, diosgenin can be converted to progesterone. It's called progesterone because it has an identical molecular structure to the progesterone that is found in woman's body. But the pharmaceutical company can't patent that. They can only patent something new. That's why they hate sodium bicarbonate. They can't patent it. So what they do is they add a few more atoms in one area and they come up with a synthetic estrogen. Now, the first contraceptive pill was just synthetic estrogen, but it was causing so many problems Because remember what estrogen is, it's a cell proliferator, causing massive cell growth in the different parts of a woman's body. So by the early 90s, they had to make some adjustments. So they changed a few more atoms in another area, and they came up with this synthetic progesterone. It's called progestin or progestone. Has that helped? No, not at all. Because what that synthetic progesterone does is it blocks the progesterone receptor sites on the cell. So let me show you how the pill works. So when these synthetic hormones are fed into this biochemical pathway that our body uses to make hormones, it causes a disruption. And the body thinks, what's going on? Must be pregnant. So because it thinks it's pregnant, it doesn't release the egg. That's why the woman doesn't fall pregnant. But if the ovary doesn't release the egg, can you see corpus luteum's not made? And if corpus luteum's not made, then progesterone levels are not maintained. So what's happening week after week, after month after month, after year on the pill, with the synthetic estrogen levels are slowly rising. And week after week, after month on the pill, what's happening to progesterone levels? They're dropping. So we have now, sadly, too common today, a situation called estrogen dominance. Estrogen, with its cell proliferator action, causing massive cell growth in the ovaries. These are the cysts on the ovaries. This is polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids in the uterus. And this endometrium, the lining of the uterus, it starts to wander. It's called endometriosis. Do you know 70 years ago, there was something like a couple of hundred cases in the world. Today, there are 10 million in America alone. And if you look at the timing of when the pill was used and the occurrence of endometriosis, it's not rocket science. It's closely connected. In fact, one writer in Australia claimed that men and women are paying a very high price for this so-called sexual freedom. Another writer, Elaine Hollingsworth, she has passed now, she called it the mass murder of millions of women. How many women today, breast cancer? 1 in 4, it is estimated. And with this high estrogen, do you remember last night when we looked at cancer? How I told her that the Australian Health Commission claimed that, or stated, not even a claim, that estrogen is a known human carcinogen because this massive cell growth feeding cancer cells in the uterus, feeding cancer cells in the breast. And by the way, with this rise in estrogen, you've not only got growths in the uterus, growths in the ovaries, growths in the cervix, growths in the birth canal, growths in the breast. And let me make a comment in a minute, just for a moment, on pap smears. What's a pap smear? They take a scrape off your cervix. Now let's say they take a scrape off your cheek every 6 months. What's going to happen after a few years? What have you got there? You've got scar tissue, you've got damage. So I don't know whether I have to tell you my thoughts on pap smears. Maybe you can guess it. Oh, what do they say? Have a pap smear to prevent cervical cancer. What? It can actually cause it because you're continually causing damage to that. So you might like to ask me if I have pap smears. I've never had a pap smear and I don't intend to But what I do is I keep my body working well. I have one sex partner. It's my husband. That's the way God planned it. And I keep my body well hydrated, well slept, well fed, and balance the hormones, as we will look at it, how to do that in a minute. That's how you can prevent cervical cancer. Not by scraping it every 6 months. That don't make any sense at all. And you might like to know my opinion on biopsies. Maybe I don't have to tell you. I'm very much against them because biopsies damage the tissues. If you're not sure if it damages the tissues, get someone to take a biopsy of your cheek and then you can observe what it does. So the contraceptive pill is one of the biggest causes. Where's progesterone? Down here. So with the rise in estrogen, not only have you got growths happening in the reproductive organs, what you've also got is this high estrogen opposes thyroid function. How many women were on the pill in their teens, 20s, and they're now in their 50s, 60s with thyroid problems? Please don't let anyone take your thyroid out. Let me tell you about when I was in Tanzania last year. They brought a lady to me. She's in her mid-60s. She said, 20 years ago, they cut my thyroid out. I said, I'm very sorry to hear that. Don't let anyone do that to you. I said, so you're on thyroxine now? She said, no. I said, didn't the doctor put you on thyroxine? She said, I wasn't going to go back to him. I thank God for introducing me to this lady. 20 years she's been living with no thyroid and she doesn't take thyroxine. What are we told? That's an impossibility. I'd like to suggest that this body that God gave us is a body of possibilities. What an incredible body we serve with the inbuilt ability to adapt and adjust. And when progesterone levels are down there, progesterone now has actually lost its protective effect on testosterone. Progesterone being down there, the happy hormone is sadly deficient. That's premenstrual tension. I said to the lady, do you get premenstrual tension? She said, no, I just hate my husband for a week every month. She's got it. Another lady, I said, do you get premenstrual tension? She was there with her husband. She said, ask him. He's nodding. Isn't that good news that it's not normal? Isn't it good news that tonight you're going to learn how that can be resolved? So the pill. And then the woman goes through menopause. She was on the pill in her teens, and now, it's 30 years later, she's going through menopause. What's happening? She's getting hot flushes. High estrogen causes capillary dilation. All the blood rushes to the skin. The husband knows it because in the middle of the night all the blankets get thrown off. And then half an hour later they all get pulled on again. And if he says anything, she'll bite his head off. And she's not a happy lady. So this high estrogen's causing capillary dilation. There's your hot flushes, there's the night sweats. This high estrogen is causing weight gain. How many ladies are struggling with weight loss? Often the missing link is this hormonal imbalance. It's almost impossible to lose weight if estrogen levels are high. And it's not going to put the weight on your ankles, it's going to put it on the reproductive areas in your body. Have you watched Sound of Music recently? Remember Julie Andrews? Have you seen the size of her waist? This tiny little waist. Don't see a lot of tiny little waists anymore. There's a couple of reasons, and one is the hormonal imbalance. The other one, and you can read about it in Dr. William Davis's book called Wheat Belly, the hybridization of the wheat. And I think I'm speaking on diabetes on Friday night at the camp meeting, is a huge contributing factor to not only weight gain in the belly area, but also diabetes. I've spoken to a few people that said, I lost my belly when I stopped the wheat. See, it was hybridized in the 50s. There's been a change in it. And that's why I think Tristan's bread has become so popular, because a lot of people are realizing that wheat's not sitting well. What else is happening with the lady going through menopause who went on the pill when she was younger? She's got no desire for sex, and when she has sex, it's painful. She's depressed. She is of all women most miserable. So she goes to the doctor and she complains about these hot flushes she's getting. She's the CEO of a company. She's chairing a meeting and she gets a hot flush. So the doctor has the answer. What will he give her? Hormone replacement therapy. She's happy because the flush has stopped. But drugs never cure disease. They can just mask symptoms. They never cure disease, they just change the form and location. And 6 years later, she's got a lump in her breast. She goes to the doctor, she's got breast cancer. He takes her off hormone replacement immediately. Why does he do that? He knows that it can cause breast cancer. So you say to the physician, well, why do you do that? He said she was suffering and it brought her relief. Well, that is true. And not every woman will get breast cancer. That's also true. But if you say to the woman, I'll give you a choice, breast cancer or hot flushes, what will be the answer? Bring on the flushes. I'll just have a shower 3 times a day and get a black lace fan, yeah? I've seen a few black lace fans. But tonight, I'm going to show you there's another option, and that is balancing the hormones, which will reduce the hot flushes, because that's the cause. You've got to find the cause. If you don't find the cause, you won't have a cure. But there are some women who've never been on the pill. There's more. What causes a chicken to be fully developed in 5 weeks? Hormones. If it's in the chicken, it's in the egg. If it's in the meat, it's in the meat products. In Australia, it's against the law for cattle farmers to give their cattle growth stimulants, but a cattle farmer's wife attended our program. She said, every month they knock on our door pushing the growth stimulants. She said, we don't do it, but we know most do, because you can get the animal to market quicker. So you've got to, anyway, it's all about the dollar, I guess. What about fish? Well, when you've got 80% of women on the pill or HRT, going to the toilet, the sewage goes out to sea, the fish are feeding on the sewage. They're finding fish with reproductive problems today. They're finding male fish with female tendency, vice versa. And they're not the end of the food chain. We're the end of the food chain. Lentils are sounding more attractive all the time, is that right? Number 3. I've known some people never been on the pill HRT, and they're plant eaters. Plastics. In the molecular structure of estrogen, there's a phenyl ring. And this phenyl ring is the key that unlocks the door to get estrogen into the estrogen receptor site on the cell. And plastics, a lot of plastics today contain the phenyl. One is nonylphenol. When my brother was 18, he got his first car. It was a second-hand car, and it was a Zephyr, and the dashboard was cracked. Now, those from my era, remember when the dashboard on second-hand cars was cracked? It was always cracked. So he just put some turquoise fur on it and a cow whose head went up and down. That's very 60s, isn't it? But the dashboards don't crack anymore. Have you noticed? That's because they've got this phenol in it. It softens the plastic. Another is bisphenol A. And bisphenol A is found in many plastic bottles. But notice, they both have the phenyl ring, which means they're estrogen mimickers. So be careful of your exposure to plastics. It's not the odd day you drink out of a plastic bottle because you're thirsty, and it's not the odd day you do. It's not the odd day you do, the odd day you don't. It's what you mostly drink out of. And a lot of people buy those water in those light blue hard plastic big bottles. They're BPA free. And my plastic bottle, where's my plastic bottle? There's my plastic bottle, that's BPA free. It's like a hard plastic. But see how I can squeeze that? That has got some bisphenol A in it. So be careful of the children, be careful what they're drinking out of. Now, what I also mentioned yesterday was fabric. Nylon, acrylic and polyester. Nylon, acrylic and polyester are three fabrics that were created in a chemical laboratory. And they also have an effect of estrogen mimicking. They're called xenoestrogens. Xenoestrogens that come from plastics, come from chemicals, and one of the biggest chemicals, it's a herbicide. It's called glyphosate or Roundup. So be careful what you're eating. Can you see little by little these can all be coming in? Now, estrone and estradiol have strong cell proliferator action, and these xenoestrogens all have that strong cell proliferator action. So you can have someone who's never been on the pill, and they're eating plants, but the plants that they're eating aren't all organic, so they'd be getting some of the glyphosate, and they're wearing plastic clothes. So they're coming in from so many areas. So if you've got a friend that has a baby, here's a great present for them. You buy them some diapers, disposable diapers made out of starch, because you can get them from, you've got shops like Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, places like that, they have them. And buy them we call it a dummy or pacifier. You can get rubber ones. Buy them one of them, and buy them some little wooden rattles. Do you call them rattles? Those little toys babies play with. And buy them a stainless steel bottle with a little rubber teat. That's a great present. And when they open the present and they look at it, because everyone else has given them fluffy toys and all that sort of stuff, you can look at them, they'll look at you and you can say, I'm concerned about your baby's sexuality. They'll be interested. Because really and truly, this is where it starts. That's where it's all starting. You go into some of these shops and look at the clothes for children. A lot of them are made out of nylon, acrylic, polyester. So make sure the baby is in natural fibre, because that's where it'll start. No wonder we've got little girls who are starting to develop breasts at the age of 8 years of age. There's one area that can stimulate early menstruation, and that is when children have exposure to sex scenes. And this is very common today, unfortunately, with movies, and even in the cartoons. They're slipping it in every area. So please be very cautious on what the children are exposed to. And unfortunately, another area, and that is when children experience sexual abuse, that can also awaken feelings in them that shouldn't be awakened till they're ideally marrying age, and that can also cause them to go into menstruation early. So as you can see, it's not just one thing, it's a whole lot of little bits and pieces, and it can be different in every case. That's why you're the doctor. Because only you know your history, only you know what you've been through, and only you know how your body responds or reacts. So the million-dollar question now is, how do we turn it around? But before I show you, there's a question on soy. So let me show you the facts on soy. Here are 3 cells, and here are 3 estrogen receptor sites. And this one up here is xenoestrogen. So these are the chemical estrogens, or the estrogen mimickers. Xenoestrogen is 20,000 times stronger than human estrogen. So how big is the xeno? It's big. How big's the human? It just sits in the receptor site like that. But human estrogen is 20,000 times stronger than plant. Well, how big is the plant? The plant's just a tiny little slip of the thing that it just slips into the lining of the receptor site. Which is the one we most need to fear? It's certainly not the plant. And remember Psalm 104 verse 14, that God made herbs for the service of man? So when the plant estrogen comes in, where do you find plant estrogens? Yes, in soy, they're naturally occurring. Also red clover. And some greens, you've got some natural estrogens. They come in and they knock. They say, "Excuse me, do you need me?" And the cell says, "No, we've got enough." And so what the plant estrogen does is it sits at the door. So what that does is that protects that receptor site from this xenoestrogen. Because remember, this estrogen mimicker has got the key. It's got the phenyl ring. It just gets right in. Remember what it does? Get out of my way. I've got a job to do whether you need it or not. And that's why many people are suffering from a hormonal imbalance, because of these estrogen mimickers. But if the natural estrogen comes to the door and knocks and says, "Do you need me?" and the plant says yes, it will come in. So what plants do is they work with the needs of the body. Medicine calls it synergism, working with the needs of the body. That's the beauty of herbs. The only time soy is a problem is if it's been genetically modified and grown with poisons. And one farmer told me this, an American farmer. He said, "This soybean's genetically modified to resist Roundup. It's called Roundup Ready." And he told me that 5 times before market, the field is sprayed with Roundup. That's 5 doses of this xenoestrogen. That soybean will cause a young man to develop breasts. That soybean will cause the young girl to start menstruating early. That soybean will increase breast cancer, prostate cancer, not because of the natural occurring estrogens, but because of the xenoestrogens. And as my girlfriend tells people, she did a thesis on soy. They say, tell us about the soy. She said, it's real easy. She said, God made it good, man mucked it up. End of story. So how do we turn this around? Number one, eliminate. If you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. Eliminate the pill. Well, how do we stop having babies popping up everywhere? Sex is two-part, contraception should be two-part. The woman's body will give her 3 signs so that she knows when she's ovulating. One is her temperature changes. So it's as simple as a woman taking her temperature before she gets out of bed in the morning, and she will find that her temperature does this, drops and goes up onto a higher plane. That is her first sign that she has begun to ovulate. And most women will ovulate in this 3rd week. But taking her temperature allows her to define it. The second sign is that her vaginal lubricant changes. When estrogen's high, the lubricant is more white and not as profuse. But when progesterone levels rise, then the woman will experience clear, stringy, quite profuse lubricant. The third sign is that her cervix changes, and it's a matter of a woman testing her cervix every day. When she is ovulating, the cervix shrinks up a little bit, the mucus plug goes. Now, at first, a woman has got nothing to compare it to, but as she tests it every day and the weeks and the months go by, she starts to see the changes. In my book, Sustain Me, there's a QR code and you can download a chart. And so a lady can print out this chart and write down all her signs, and most women will ovulate in this week here, in this 3rd week of the month. But those 3 signs allow her to define it. So she can say to her husband, I'm safe on the 2nd week, I'm safe, not safe here, I'm safe here. And when she is not safe, then he either uses a condom or he masters the art of withdrawal. I read an article about Italian men, how they prided themselves in not getting their women pregnant by mastering the art of withdrawal. So you see, it's 2 parts, so contraception should be 2-part. And my daughter Jessica and her husband Matthew, I think they were married for nearly 4 years before their first daughter was born. How nice. And they had 3 daughters, and they chose exactly when they were going to have their daughters. And the last daughter was born within a few weeks of them moving into their new house. In fact, the midwife came and blew up a bath, and baby was born in the lounge room of the new house. How nice that they were able to plan that because they'd mastered the art of contraception. And how nice that their daughters were born without a hormonal imbalance, because neither the father or the mother had had any of these influencing factors that disrupt the hormones. So eliminate the pill, eliminate HRT, and I'm going to show you by this list how you can balance the hormones and ease hot flushes and the menopause symptoms. So there is no need for HRT. What is HRT? It's more synthetic hormones. Eliminate meat and its products. If you want to eat meats and its products today, must be organic, because I believe it is not safe. Just go to the abattoirs and you just look at how they're grown. It will turn you right off. Plastics, I think it's impossible to eliminate plastics, but you do the best you can. Ideally, you have your clothes, natural fibres. Last night I mentioned 3 that are made with wood pulp. Viscose is made from bamboo. And ladies, there's a brand called Booty. It's an Australian brand, but they have a wide range of underwear and sports clothes, all made out of viscose, which is bamboo. Rayon is also made out of wood pulp, and Modal. Yes, they use a chemical to soften the wood, but all you have to do is wash it and hang it in the sun for a day, and that detoxes effectively. And even when you buy cotton, you must wash it before you wear it because it's one of the most sprayed crops. So eliminate the fabrics that can be contributing to this hormonal imbalance, which is the fabrics made out of chemicals. One lady said, "Barbara, I'm going to have to throw all my clothes out." I said, well, there's these wonderful places called thrift stores. I love them. Just take a magnifying glass and just read your labels. Have you noticed you have to have a magnifying glass today? So try and keep your food in stainless steel or glass. Go for stainless steel or BPA-free plastic bottles. Go organic as much as possible. We are not 100% organic, but we do the best we can. That's all you can do. But most of the food we eat is organic. And get the chemicals out of your home. It's time to go home and do a great cleanse of what's under your laundry sink, what's under your kitchen sink, and you will have a lot more room because all you need is the biodegradable washing detergent and a bottle of white vinegar and a big packet of sodium bicarbonate, maybe some essential oils. So eliminate the causes. Number 2, the liver has the ability to detoxify us from excess estrogen, and it'll do it down one of 2 pathways. And the pathway that eliminates the excess estrogen out of the body is stimulated by vitamin B, especially vitamin B6, B9 and B12. Also, the cabbage family contains indoles, and indoles stimulate the pathway, as do vitamin B6, B9 and B12, to eliminate excess estrogen out of the body. Also flaxseed. There is a use for your coffee grinder. You can grind flax seeds and sprinkle them on your breakfast every morning. Licorice. If you've got high blood pressure, just forget the licorice. So number 1 is turn the tap off. Number 2 is the B6, 9 and 12, the cabbage family and flaxseed and licorice. They all stimulate the liver to release excess estrogen out of the body. Number 3, and it's what is sold in the shop here, is Comfort Yam Cream. And Comfort Yam Cream contains the plant chemical diosgenin, so that when you apply the Comfort Yam Cream to your skin, and how it's applied is twice daily, every morning and every night, and inside of arms 1 time, inside of thighs another time, abdomen another time, chest another time. So twice a day, morning and night, and alternate the sites of application. So when you apply this cream, the fat cells take up diosgenin, and diosgenin stimulates the pathway that your body uses to make progesterone. And when you stimulate progesterone, when you reinstate mother hormone back to her rightful place, she automatically brings estrogen down, estrogen with its cell proliferator action. So anyone who has ever experienced, is or has any cancers or problems in these reproductive areas, it's imperative that estrogen is brought back into its rightful place by the application of the Comfort Yam Cream. What I like about this cream is it works with the hormone pathways in the body to restore balance. And how that balance is restored by reinstating progesterone. If progesterone's too low, testosterone has lost its protection. If progesterone's too low, then estrogen can get out of control. But once progesterone is reinstated through the application of the Yam Cream, if estrogen's too low, it'll bring it up. If estrogen's too high, it'll bring it down. And for men, once this cream is applied, it now plays a protective role on testosterone, because testosterone, when it's lost the protection of progesterone, can be converted to dehydroxytestosterone, which causes inflammation of the prostate gland. So any prostate problems, it's important for the man to go on the Comfort Yam Cream. And the good news is they have, Comfort Yam Cream have just released in cream. In fact, I think it's here that the first sales are happening of the man's Comfort Cream. Now, this Comfort Cream that they're making especially for men, it has saw pimento, it has small willow leaf, which are both specifics for the prostate gland. Also ashwagandha, which is a calming herb. So there's a whole lot of little bits and pieces in the men's cream that are specific for the prostate. How does a man apply the cream? He just applies it morning and night, and he doesn't have a break. Women are cyclic, so a woman, she applies the cream for 3 weeks a month. So if a woman's still menstruating, she just applies it for the 3 weeks of the month where she is not menstruating. So simply put, as soon as a woman menstruates, she stops applying the cream. What if a woman is no longer menstruating? Well, she just chooses 1 week of the month where she does not apply the cream. Some women find it easiest to eliminate the last week of the month or the first week of the month. 1 jar of the cream, we found, it lasts approximately three months. And what we find is that most people need to be on the cream for at least 1 year. So that's about 4 jars. So it's not an expensive supplement to apply to the body. Can you eat the yam cream? The liver detoxifies most of the actives, so taking it on the skin is the best. So why don't men have a break and women do? Well, in her book, Hormone Heresy, Cheryl Selman, she gives this analogy. She said, men are like the sun. They rise every morning, conquer the day, and go down every night. Whereas women are like the moon. Sometimes they're full, sometimes they're half, sometimes they're a little slither. That's her analogy of the difference between men and women. So it's important for a woman to have that break to keep up her cycle. If a woman has thyroid problems, it's vital that she start applying the cream, because remember, high estrogen opposes thyroid problems. So it's important to bring that estrogen down by boosting progesterone. So back to the men, I had one man attend our program and he had prostate cancer, and he was 60, I think he was about 65. He was having a 3-monthly injection from the doctor to try and bring his testosterone levels under control. He developed breasts. He was having hot flushes several times a day. He came to our program. He learnt the value of the Sustain Me principles. We'll do green. So the basic laws of health. And he heard this lecture about how the yam cream balances the hormones, so he made a decision. Remember, it's our God-given right that we decide what we do to our body. He made a decision not to have that 3-monthly injection anymore, to start applying the yam cream twice a day. He began to implement the laws of health. He stopped the nightly red wine. He stopped his daily coffee. He went to a mostly plant-based diet. And his wife emailed me 10 months later. She said the breasts have gone down, he has no more hot flushes, and the doctor told him his testosterone levels are the best they've been for years. What an incredible body we live in. That when we start to give it the right conditions, it starts to balance out. So the Comfort Yam cream can be used for men for prostate problems. One man said to me, "This cream just puts lead in my pencil." I don't know how else to say it. He said, "I'm not performing like I was when I was 20, but I'm better than I was." So back to the women. What age can a woman begin this? I think it's good to keep it to a girl starts to show problems. So if a young girl's developing breasts at 9 and she starts menstruating at 10, it would definitely benefit her to go on the yam cream, because that's a clear sign that she has a hormonal imbalance. Something else that's very interesting about the hormonal imbalance is what it does to bones. So progesterone, it stimulates bone-building cells, and these bone-building cells are called osteoblast. Osteo meaning bone and blast meaning new bone. Whereas estrogen, it stimulates osteoclast cells. An osteoclast, that's bone, clast means removal of the old bone. Now when these two hormones are in the proper relation or the correct balance, it works very well. Estrogen takes the old, progesterone comes in with the new. But can you imagine what happens when estrogen goes high and progesterone is low? It's called estrogen dominance, progesterone deficiency. Too much old bone is coming away and there's not enough progesterone to supply the new bone. It's called osteoporosis. So everyone with osteoporosis, osteopenia, that's what's called the precursor for osteoporosis, they should be on the Comfort Yam cream, because it boosts progesterone, and when you boost progesterone, you boost your osteoblast cells. When a person has osteoporosis, they usually put on Fosamax. Do you know what Fosamax do? It causes the jaw to break down and causes the teeth to weaken. A lady said to me recently, I can't take it anymore because my jaw's starting to break down. Every drug has a side effect. Drugs do not cure disease. They never cure disease. All they do is mask symptoms, but actually that's not just all they do. They not only mask symptoms, and that is why a lot of people think they're good, but they come along with side effects. That's why if anyone says to me, I've got this and this and this problem, you know what my next question is? Are you on medication? Have you Googled the medication? Have you Googled the side effects of the medication? Some medication can be stopped immediately, and we saw that with the blood thinning medication. We saw that with the cholesterol-lowering medication. But some medication has to be eased off, and that's more the steroids. That has to come off very slowly. Also, antidepressants. Unless the person's been on the antidepressants for 3 weeks, they can stop because basically haven't been there long enough to have an effect. And I've seen many people come off their antidepressants, especially women, by implementing this lifestyle. And what the Comfort Yam Cream does is it boosts progesterone, which is the happy hormone. There's no known toxic dose of progesterone, but there's a definite toxic dose of estrogen, as you have seen. I would like to suggest that probably 85 to 90% of people that I meet have a hormonal imbalance. And yet the symptoms can be different every time. When I was in Ireland doing a tour in July, a lady came to me and she was about 35 and she said, since the birth of my last child 2 years ago, I get daily migraines. And I said to her, I think it's a hormonal imbalance because it happened after the birth of her last child. I said, why don't you try the yam cream? The next day she said to me, I went home, the migraine was coming, I applied the yam cream and in 20 minutes the migraine went. She said the next day the migraine started again and I applied the yam cream and it didn't develop. I said, that's wonderful news. 2 weeks later, she travelled 3 hours to see me because I did an Irish tour, started at the bottom and went top and went down the bottom. She said, I've travelled here to tell you that it's 2 weeks and I haven't had a migraine for 2 weeks. Now, it's not the only cause of a migraine, but I have heard several stories of late where women have found relief from their migraines by applying the Comfort Yam Cream. This is particularly applicable when you investigate when the migraines began and they began at puberty. That's a clear sign that there's a hormone link there. Postnatal depression is lack of progesterone. All the person needs is the yam cream. The progesterone binds the molecules of the fetus to the lining of the uterus. So a woman can take it while she's pregnant and it will prevent miscarriage. My daughter Jessica, she took the yam cream through her whole pregnancy. And how many women are struggling because they have multiple miscarriages, and yet all they need to do is balance these hormones. I have found that when the laws of health are implemented, the stimulants and the refined sugars are stopped, the person starts exercising, going to bed earlier, starts applying the cream, they're getting quite dramatic responses. What I wanted to show you tonight was what we have found is often the missing link in disease is this hormonal imbalance. I have people say to me, but I'm going to bed early. I'm exercising every day. I'm not taking any chemicals. And then when I investigate, I find out that they were on the pill when they were younger. Anyone that's been on the contraceptive pill, even if it was 30 years ago, they need to be on the Comfort Cream to restore the balance. What if you go on the comfort cream and you don't have a hormonal imbalance? Well, can you have too much happy hormone? I'd like to suggest that we don't have enough happy hormone. Now, I know everyone's eager to get home and go to bed, so I'm going to say good night and thank you very much for your attention. Tomorrow night, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mother. We have a very important announcement, and that is over a year ago when we found it very hard to get Anna's Wild Yam Cream from Australia, God brought into our lives Linda from Made Down on Woodridge Farm. And for the last year, she has supplied our customers with the yam cream for the ladies that we've also used for the gentlemen. But today, at this camp meeting, we are bringing out for the first time, Linda, what do we have?
Men's blend.
It's a men's blend specifically made for gentlemen with herbs specifically made for the inflammation of the prostate and ED, and it's wonderful. So it's up there, so go and get it. You can get it from my website in about a month. We have 1,000 for today. Good night. See you tomorrow.
One last announcement. Sorry, guys. Just wanted to mention that Barbara's lectures on Friday night and Saturday night are different than what she's done already. So she's going to be speaking on, 1 second, I'll pull it up here. She's going to be speaking on diabetes and depression on Friday and God's plan for the mind.